South Beach, South Beach, Miami. It owes its renaissance in the 90s to AIDS. South Beach in the 80s was nothing but cocaine and heroin, shooting galleries. It was its heydays was the 50s, right? The 40s, 50s, 60s. That was Miami Beach in the heydays. 70s it started going downhill. In the 80s, it was just crime-ridden slums, right? AIDS came along, and it was predominantly New York, Philadelphia, some Miami. There was something called viatical settlements. There are these companies like vulture capitalists. They would buy your life insurance policy from you. In other words, if you had a $100,000 life insurance policy, they would give you 80% of that 100,000. So you get 80,000 cash. But in your will, you had to sign over your life insurance maturity to them, and they would collect on it when you died. So what gay men in like New York and DC and Philadelphia would do, if they knew they were like going to die, they would cash in, they would sell their life insurance policies to viatical companies, and they would get a big chunk of cash, and they would move down to Miami Beach because A, it was cheap to live there. If you could live in crime, they could live in crime-ridden areas in New York City and in Philadelphia. They can move in, they can be fine in Miami. There were still doctors who were treating HIV because Miami was still kind of a big area for HIV. And also the winters were way more temperate than in the Northeast. So they wouldn't get pneumonias and they wouldn't get conditions that would land them in the hospital every other month, right? So they moved down, a lot of gay men, HIV positive, moved down to Miami and waited to die, essentially. Protease inhibitors hit the market. They kind of looked at each other after about a year and said, well, I guess we're not going to die. So now what do we do? And they said, well, you know what? We do what we always do. Let's fix up the joint. So they started opening up with their viatical settlements. They started opening up boutiques and they started opening up restaurants and they started opening up. And then they told their friends came down. The mid 90s, it was heyday for gays coming down to Miami Beach. Then they brought their celebrity friends. Like Madonna, it was not a thing to see Madonna down in the middle of a dance floor in the mid 90s, just dancing with the guys. Nobody cared. They thought they were more fabulous than Madonna. So they didn't care that Madonna was down there. So a lot of celebrities could kind of like disappear into the group, right? Because it was among friends. And then those friends brought other friends. Then Johnny Versace came down and opened up the modeling industry to Miami Beach. And then more restaurants opened up. And it was like, and Roy and I started going down to Miami about 97 or 98. So we were right at the tail end of that big heyday, right? It was nothing to see gay couples walking hand in hand down the streets, right? It was very gay friendly. We were predominantly the ones that were there. We were the demographic, right? And then the Travel Channel got wind of what was going on in Miami. So then Samantha Brown came down and did these TV shows all about how wonderful South Beach was. And it was amazing and it's incredible. And it was on the Travel Channel every other weekend. Once the Travel Channel watchers came, then the gangs from Hialeah, the bad areas of Miami started coming out and causing troubles. And, it was still kind of like a good area and whatever. Then right around the early 2000s, it became problematic for gays. I mean, there were still people that the police was still, try to keep the bad elements out, but there were gay men and lesbians that were targeted for violence just walking down the street. So it was kind of like, yeah, so Miami Beach now is kind of like seen its heyday and it's done. That whole 90s resurgence of Miami was in part due to the changing cultures around AIDS. That's not a story you're going to see on the Travel Channel, though.